This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Today we are thinking about goal setting, motivation and priorities ahead of the new academic year. What are your goals? How are you going to achieve them? And what is it going to look like for you when you have achieved them?
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
A very good morning to you. It is Saturday the 31st of August 2024. I had to double check then because I couldn't remember whether we were the 30th or the 31st, but we are indeed the 31st. It is the final day of August. And a very August day it is too, just looking out of the window here in the Saturday Breakfast Studio. It is sunny. It is quite calm. There's a gentle summer breeze blowing. It is a pleasant day, I think most people would agree. As we know, this is not my type of weather. I much prefer it when it is cloudy and raining. But, you know, we take what comes. We take what comes because we cannot control the weather. And so there is no point complaining about it, in my opinion. But I am really glad for everybody who is joining me live today, particularly if you are doing so at the expense of getting Oasis tickets, which I believe have just gone on sale. Don't quote me on that because I can't remember where I read it, but I do believe I read that the tickets are going on sale right now. They're probably sold out already at 2 minutes past 9. So welcome if you could or couldn't get tickets and so you're joining in anyway. But thank you for choosing to be here with me instead of furiously refreshing your browser trying to get hold of those tickets. It's been a funny time for music concerts, I think. I don't know whether it's just because I've been a little bit more aware of them. I'm not... This is a bit weird to say, to the extent that I don't really want to say, because I don't think it's true. I'm not a big music person, except I am. I don't tend to do like concerts and stuff when they come around, mostly because I don't listen to a whole lot of contemporary music. And I promise, this is not me being a hipster. This is not me saying, oh, I only listen to bands that you will have never heard of. Absolutely promise that. I just tend to listen to music that just kind of randomly comes up on YouTube and I go, oh, I like that. And then I add it to a playlist. Or, of course, being a former West End actor, I listen to a lot of musicals. I listen to a shocking number of musicals, quite honestly. So yeah, that's why I can be with you this morning instead of queuing up for tickets. But yeah, it has been for music fans. I think it's been quite a good summer with the news of certain Manchester-based pop indie rock. I'm not quite sure. I'm too young. I was like 8 when they were at their height. But with news of them reuniting for a tour, and then of course Miss Swift has just finished her European leg of her tour, which seems to have been the longest tour ever. And I think she's taking a couple of weeks off before starting the final North American leg. People who are interested in contemporary music, in pop music, rock music, whatever it might be, I think are being spoiled at the moment. And I'm really happy for you. Because I know we talk on the show quite a lot, usually when I do like my seasonal episodes, my celebrational episodes. In England particularly, we don't have a whole lot of holidays. We have just this past Monday had our last bank holiday until Christmas. And it can be quite difficult to find things to look forward to. And I think particularly as we move into the winter months, which, are my favorite time of year, but are not for everybody. And it is when people start to struggle with their mental health. It's when those with seasonal affective disorder start to struggle a little bit. And we are big into mental health here on Saturday Breakfast. We very much advocate safeguarding your own mental health. I think having something like a concert, like a show, like a film release, whatever it might be, to look forward to is really, really important, because otherwise you can kind of get yourself into a bit of a rut, I think, of just focusing on the daily grind. There's an expression in French, métro boulot dodo, which is underground, work, sleep. And it's kind of the implication of that idiom is this idea that we got ourselves on a bit of a hamster wheel of only doing those things, of commuting, of doing our work, coming home and falling asleep, waking up, commuting, doing our work, coming home, falling asleep, ad infinitum. And so I think, peppering these little things into life just to make it that little bit more exciting, to give yourself something to look forward to, I think that's a good thing. I think that's a very, very good thing. And I think, it doesn't need to be something as extravagant as a concert. I've been reading about people paying out more money than I personally would be comfortable paying for tickets to Taylor Swift. And I'm glad that they did, because they could afford to. They had that money. It was their money to spend, and they did it on something that has brought them a lot of joy, a lot of pleasure. But it doesn't have to be something that big. It can be I was about to say a cinema ticket, but I think we all know that in the UK, cinema trips can be incredibly, incredibly expensive. I went when I was in the States over the summer. I went to see Deadpool Wolverine. Other films are available. And I think I got something like $4 I paid for my ticket. It was a Tuesday afternoon matinee, but still, it was about $4. Whereas if I were to try and go in the UK, it would quite easily run me 15-20 quid. So yeah, treating yourself, particularly at the moment, where we are all conscious of cost of living, of money, of whether or not we're getting a pay rise, what that means, whether or not taxes are going up, all of that sort of thing. It can seem extravagant, it can seem exorbitant, but I do think it's an important thing to build into budgets. So if you can, then you should. Tim has texted in, good morning to you. I introduced Tim in exactly the same way every single week, and I tell you that I introduced him in exactly the same way every single week. And I think this is because I've been thinking about this as I've been kind of thinking about what I want Saturday morning breakfast to be over the next academic year. I think this is because I come from the Stan Lee school of thought. Stan Lee, creator of Marvel, very, very big in the comic book world. He always said that every comic was somebody's first comic. And so that's why he liked to do a lot of recaps in his books. That's why he liked to do reminders. It's why he liked to make things as accessible as possible, because he was aware that everything that he produced would be the first time that somebody picked up his work. And I think it's the same for us here. I'm always aware that every Saturday morning breakfast could be somebody's first. And welcome to you if you are new. But Tim has texted in. This is definitely not his first show. He is a long-term friend of us here at Saturday Morning Breakfast. He was my first guest and my second guest. And he says, I think you've set yourself up for an all-singing, all-dancing musical edition of Saturday Breakfast Show quite nicely. I think so. I'm going to have to see what copyright-free songs we've got. Maybe a bit of Greensleeves, a bit of Scarborough Fair. What else could we do that is not under copyright? We could go, because we do like some folklore here. We do like some mythology. We do like some leaning into heritage. We could do a kind of maybe a Guy Fawkes extravaganza of British folk songs for no reason other than the fact that we can. If you have, like Tim, got something that you would like to say, you are free to text in. If you're listening on the Podbean app, you can text me directly via the app. If you are listening live, but you are not listening via Podbean, because we are accessible in all kinds of amazing places, then you can tweet me. I am at Mr. D. Lester. That's MRDLESTER, and that is all one word. I will read your tweet out on air and respond to you. If you are listening back, because once again, if you are listening live and this is the first time you've tuned in, all of our shows here at Teacher Talk Radio are available as podcasts here on Podbean and elsewhere if once we have finished being live. So if you are listening back and it is no longer 9:11 on Saturday, 31st of August 2024, then you can still tweet me, because as I always say, because again, something else, we like our routines here on Saturday morning breakfast. I've got to say that. Something else I always say is that the shows that I do for you are based around my interests. The things that I think are important in education, the things that I think are important in teaching, the things that I think are important in the lives of teachers. And so I will always be interested in anything you have to say on any of the topics that we discuss.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
BBC News reports on the uncertainty over the future of vocational courses, with over 450 schools and colleges in England saying they are unsure which courses they can offer in 2025. The government is conducting a review of post-16 education, and the Department for Education says this will support BTEC students. But the results of the review will not be out until December. This means schools and colleges are unsure which courses they can offer students in September 2025, despite having open days scheduled in the coming weeks. 450 schools have written to the government saying that the uncertainty is making it extremely difficult to plan for the future. Not only can they not tell prospective students which courses will be on offer, they can't tell staff either. More than 200 vocational qualifications, including BTECs and other post-16 courses, were due to be scrapped under the previous government, but days before the first funding changes were due, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said there would be a pause and review. The 455 schools and colleges in England have joined the Protect Student Choice campaign, a coalition of 25 education organisations and unions. The review comes against a backdrop of issues that have plagued the rollout of T-levels, introduced 3 years ago. Ms Phillipson confirmed T-levels will continue, despite high dropout rates and issues with exam boards. Schools Week highlights the names of the 12-strong panel appointed by government to review the curriculum and assessment. It follows the appointment in July of Professor Becky Francis, the Chief Executive of the Education Endowment Foundation, to lead the review. The panel includes Academy Trust Chief Executives Cassie Buchanan and Dr Vanessa Ogden, SEND consultant Gary Orban, and exams expert Professor Joanne Baird. It also includes Reach Foundation Curriculum Director John Hutchinson and Funmilola Stewart, who leads on equality, diversity and inclusion across the Dixon's Trust. Professor Francis said, "We have ensured that primary, secondary and post-16 sectors are represented," and added that alongside its call for evidence due to launch in September, the review would engage and consult with crucial stakeholder groups and work closely with education staff on the ground. Full details of the panel can be found in the article on the Schools Week website. Hundreds of students are set to miss out on Freshers' Week because their accommodation will not be ready. This is according to BBC Bristol, which says Bristol University brought forward Freshers' Week so students living in the new Bedminster Metalworks block will struggle to attend events as the residence will not open until the 14th of September. The university says the 819 students affected will be compensated and has offered £250 and promised extra events. But student union officers say the news leaves a sour taste. Legally binding contracts for the new accommodation mean that moving in date cannot be changed. The university brought the Freshers' Week date forward after a review of its academic year. In Wales, record numbers of pupils are being educated out of mainstream schools according to new figures. The figure of 2,279 is more than twice what it was in 2009-10 and 28% higher than before the pandemic. The Welsh Government said since the pandemic there had been an increasing demand for provision other than at school, including for physical health and mental health, as well as issues such as anxiety. The figures released do not include those educated outside of school due to parent choice. This has also been rising. Full details of this story can be found on BBC Wales. Finally, The Guardian reports that cleaners at a prestigious UK girls' school have won a dispute over pay and conditions. A strike that was due to take place next week has also been called off. The group of cleaners belonging to the United Voices of the World, a grassroots trade union for low-paid migrant workers, voted to strike after the school's contractor wanted to reduce their working time from 43 to 38 weeks a year, but offered only a £1.55 hourly pay rise in return. After the vote and appeals from teachers and former students, the contractor offered more pay, annual increases, and to meet the London living wage from next year. Whilst the James Allen's Girls' School, known as JAGS, declined to comment, it is understood that former pupils distributed leaflets about the strike and called on the school's leaders to set a good example to its pupils. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
I did it again. I should stop muting myself during the news because I just start talking and forget then that you can't hear me. I want to pick up on what Joe was talking about with regards to the T-level vocational qualification offering from 2025, because for me, this is indicative of the issue that we have where our education system is based purely around what exams can be taken. Because I think it is clearly ridiculous that schools that are beginning to have open days, I was out of interest yesterday, I was looking at websites of some independent schools to see what they were doing about the 20% VAT in January. And as soon as I clicked on the websites of all of the ones that I visited yesterday, I was met with a pop-up that was along the lines of, come to our open day on blah, blah, blah. And so, these schools, as Joe said, are having open days, are advertising their open days. And it is ridiculous that they are unable to concretely tell children what they will have the opportunity to study in 2025 in just 1 year. It is sad that the students who are about to become our year 11s are going to be uncertain about what they might be able to do in year 12 while having the stress of being in year 11. And I think I've said this on the show before. It is my opinion that if schools have the staffing where something can be offered and staff are willing to offer that knowledge, those expertise, then it should be on offer. I don't think that it should come down to whether or not an exam board is able to provide an exam for it. I really felt this way a couple of years ago when we had the big axe in MFL of some of the smaller languages. So my second language is Dutch. It's the strongest of my foreign languages, and yet I am no longer able to teach it in schools because we don't have the qualifications to go with it, unless we kind of start looking outside of the traditional GCSE A-level route, which is something that I'm talking about in a few talks that I have coming up, but is not for today. But I think, it seems silly to me that I was in my school, I had children who were interested in the Dutch language. I had children who I think would have benefited from picking up Dutch as a second language, as opposed to French or Chinese or Japanese or any of the others that I was offering. And yet, of course, I didn't, because we didn't have the ability to offer a qualification in it. And I think that's really sad. I think that's really sad that our education system is so narrow. And I think we know that it doesn't have to be, because with the introduction of the EPQ, the extended project qualification, that so many schools offer and so many universities like, we know that schools have the ability to oversee children for independent studies, so oversee children studying things that they are interested in, that they want to learn. And I think there will be a lot more security, both for students and for teaching staff, if we adopted a much wider, a much more expertise-led approach to our system. But as I have said before, that would involve a huge overhaul of the system that I personally, as just one teacher, am not in a position to do, no matter how much I might like to. Which leads me on quite nicely to our actual topic today, which is goal setting, motivation, and priorities. For many of us, well, for many of you, this will be the final weekend of the summer holiday. I am no longer in that boat because I started my new position teaching at an online school. As soon as I finished at my last school, I was doing all of my induction bits and bobs in a rush over that weekend before I went to the USA, and then I already started back because I no longer keep the same turn dates as everybody else, which is interesting because it does mean that for the first time ever in my whole life, well, since I was 4, I am not having a big September back to school, because I kind of never stopped. But for many, this is the final weekend of the summer. I know that my colleagues in my former school had their inset over the last couple of days. I know that many of you are going in for your inset Monday or Tuesday, or perhaps both. And so this is the time where we start thinking about our goal setting, our motivation for the year, our priorities for the year. And I'm going to start with a quote from J.C. Penney. J.C. Penney said, "Give me a stock clerk with a goal, and I will give you a man who will make history." And I quite liked that. I quite like that because, a stock clerk as a job, it's a bit like being a classroom teacher, really. I spoke last week on the show about how there are limited opportunities for progression for people who are classroom teachers and who like being classroom teachers and don't want to get on the leadership management ladder. And in the same way, there were limited opportunities for progression for the stock clerks back in the 20s that JC Penney was around? I don't remember. I could be way off. And yet, you can still have goals, you can still have motivations, you can still want to do something. You can still, and I think you should still want to make improvements to your own practice, to your department's practice, whatever it might be. The role that you play shouldn't limit the ambition that you have, shouldn't limit the goals that you have. And again, there can be some conflict. We recognize here that there can be some conflict. I talked last week on the show about the conflict between management and leadership, and how management fight for things to stay the same, leadership fights for change. That's very simplified. So if you want a more in-depth analysis of that, then please do go back and listen to last week's show, Decoding Leadership, where I go into a lot of detail on that idea. But you do have that conflict quite often between people who want things to change and people who want things to stay the same. And goal setting inevitably involves change, because goal setting says, what I'm doing right now is fine, but I want it to be better. And I do think sometimes this is where educational goal setting can fall down, because I think we are very bad at, we're very good at saying, I want things to be better. We're very bad at saying the things that I'm doing right now are not good enough or are not working, because we don't want to feel like we're letting down our children. So, let's just be very clear here that goal setting is not saying that what you're doing right now doesn't work. It's not saying that what you're doing right now is failing, although it could be that something you're doing right now doesn't work. It could be that something you're doing right now is failing. We don't always succeed at everything. And I think if we were more honest about the things that don't work in our classroom practice, then we would improve our classroom practice much more efficiently than if we just went chasing the next big fad. But goal setting is about being realistic, and it's about saying, actually, what I'm doing right now is great. What I'm doing right now, is fine, it's working, but I would like more. I would like to be better. And so that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to kind of do it together, a bit of an experimental format for the show today, but I'm going to kind of do this as a bit of a workshop. So what you might want to do, or you might not, because you might just want to sit and listen. You may want to grab a pen and a piece of paper. You may want to open up a word processing document or a spreadsheet. You might want somewhere that you can make some notes over the next hour-ish, just because of some of the activities that I'm going to be doing. Now, I'm going to be doing these activities myself, and I'm going to be sharing the outcomes with you of me doing them. You are free to do them along with me. I will provide you with the time to do that, so long as the music works, because when we experimented with some music a couple of weeks ago, it didn't work. But, we try again. We always try again, because resilience is part of goal setting. And we're just going to kind of set my goals together, because I think that will help me to stay accountable for my goals. It will help to give me a sense of, okay, I have told my friends at Saturday morning breakfast what I'm planning on doing, and some of them are going to ask me whether I've done it, and so I have to. And I personally need that accountability. I don't like being told off, so be nice to me if I don't do them. But I do kind of need, do need that accountability. And I think it's just nice to share. Now, if you want to share your outcomes for any of the activities that we do this morning, please do. Again, you can text me, you can tweet me. However, I am going to caveat this with a bit of a warning. And this warning is about the role of endorphins in goal setting. I talk about kind of chemicals and psychology and biology as if I'm some kind of scientist. I'm not. So please do take this with a grain of salt. But I remember reading quite recently something that said that if you prematurely share a goal, then it gives you the same endorphin release as actually doing it. And this is where a lot of people fail in their goal setting and in their goal achieving, is that they tell people that they're going to do it. So they get that rush, they get that positive reinforcement, and then they don't do it because they don't have to anymore. Because they've already got from the goal setting what they were originally wanting, which is that endorphin rush. I looked this up because I once heard a writer asked about her work in progress, and she said, "Well, I would rather not tell you about it, because if I tell you what my story is going to be about, if I give you a synopsis of my story, then in my head it's like I've written it, so I don't want to write it anymore." And it's exactly the same psychology here. Sometimes sharing your goals before you are ready to start on them is the same psychologically, mentally, as doing them in the first place. They just don't get you to that next stage of your life. And I think this is something that we don't tend to take into account when we do performance management. When we sit down with our line managers and we share our goals for the year, we kind of don't take into account that some goals shouldn't be shared because that's going to stop us from doing them. So if you want to share your goals with me this morning, if you want to share anything that comes from the activities that we do this morning, please do, but don't feel that you have to, particularly if that's actually going to hinder your progress instead of help it. So the first thing that we're going to do, as always when you're doing any goal setting, is we're going to look forward. We're going to look 5 years forward, because, you know, that seems to be the point that we've all agreed is how far forward you look. But we're not going to ask the question that we usually ask. The question that we usually ask is, where are you going to be in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? We've all been asked that question at interview. We've all been asked that question when we've been at a dinner party and not known what to say. You know, you always get asked, where are you going to be in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? But I don't like that phrasing, because to me, that's kind of an absolute. Now, this is me being pedantic. It's semantics, but I'm a linguist, so I'm allowed. This idea of where do you? That do is very absolute. That where is very absolute. And it doesn't really allow for life to get in the way. And I think that if you use that where do you see yourself, what are you going to do phrasing, when you fall at the first hurdle, when something gets in the way and stops you from achieving your first sub-goal, which we'll talk about later, then the whole thing can fall apart. Because all of a sudden, you are not reaching that absolute that you have pictured for yourself. And so I like to be a bit more hedgy with it, and I like to use the conditional. What would you like your life to be like in 5 years? And again, it's semantics, but we have these words, we have these subtleties for a reason. And it's because the ideas are different. The way we respond to them is different. And I think if you start thinking, what would I like my life to be like? And you introduce that conditional, you do give yourself some wiggle room. Now, some people do find wiggle room dangerous. Some people like that absolute, because if they start to give themselves any wiggle room, then they will use it as an excuse not to fulfill their goals, not to do what they need to do, not to do what they want to do. So if you are one of those people who needs an absolute, then by all means stick with, what is your life going to look like in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? But if you find that a bit too much pressure, if you find that a bit too stark, if you find that a little bit too excuse giving, then use that condition of, what would you like your life to look like in 5 years? And phrase it that way instead. See if that helps. Now, 5 years is quite a long time. 5 years is a very long time. I have a 5-year journal that started in January of this year, and it takes me through to, he says, grabbing it because he can't actually remember, the end of 2028. So that's kind of the time span that we are looking for. And a YouTuber that I watched put it quite succinctly when he started using a 5-year journal. I was influenced. I'm going to hold my hands up and say I was influenced, because he said in the 5 years leading up to him getting his journal, he had gone from being a professional dancer to being in quite a severe accident that left him hospitalized and unable to dance. He went through a period of depression because he didn't know what his life was going to look like. He started art journaling just as a hobby. He turned that into a business, and then he went back to dancing. And all of that happened in a period of 5 years. And none of it was what he was expecting, because, the accident that he got in was not planned. It was not part of his 5-year goal. The business that he launched was not planned. It was not part of his 5-year goal. So it's a very long time. It is a very long time. In 5 years, I will be 44, which is quite scary, in my opinion. Please don't text in and tell me that it's not, because I am aware, like rationally, I'm aware that that's not very old. But let me have my midlife crisis, please. And so I'm thinking, what would I like 44-year-old Darren's life to look like? So, assuming that the music works, I'm going to give you 90 seconds, which is not very long, but 90 seconds either to write down, if you want to write it down, or just to ponder, what would you like your life to look like in 5 years' time? Hmm. 90 seconds to anticipate 5 years. I don't know whether that was long or short. So, I've been thinking, because I would never ask you to do something that I was not willing to do myself as a teacher. I think that would be wrong. So what would I like my life to look like in 5 years? I would like to still be here with you on a Saturday morning. Hopefully that is a good thing for you guys, and you're not like, oh god, we got to put up with 5 more years of Darren chatting on at us on a Saturday. I would like to still be in my house. I would like to be surrounded by my books that I've read, books that I've written. I would like to have grown my department, because at the moment I'm just offering Latin, but I would like to grow the classical offering of my school. I would like to have changed the education system at large, but that's not going to happen. And it's okay that that's not going to happen, because I can have things that I would like that are not feasible. I would like to have finished my doctorate. So the 5-year mark is kind of the end of my time span. So I would have liked to have finished it within those 5 years. Which means that I would like to have changed my Twitter handle, because I suppose I can't be at Mr. D. Lester if I am then Dr. D. Lester, but I still could be, I suppose. And that is kind of what it looks like. My what would I like my life to look like in 5 years goal is very small. It's small. And I think that's okay. Because ultimately, for me, the point of all of it, the point of teaching, the point of being alive, is just to be happy. So I guess my big overarching 5-year goal is to have a life with which I'm happy and in which I'm happy. And now that I've told you that, I've released the endorphins, I don't need to do it. But the reason that we look ahead at 5 years is because goals need to be broken down anyway. Goals need to be broken down into steps anyway. So if you're going to break a goal down into steps, then you may as well start big. And some of you, maybe those of you who are more ambitious than I am, are going to say, well, actually, I am going to change the education system over the next 5 years. And that is a perfectly valid, perfectly legitimate 5-year goal, because you then break it down into the steps that you need to be able to achieve it. You can do I want to be the guy that says you can do whatever you want to? No, because I'm not actually sure that I think that's true. But you can want to do whatever you want to. Your life can look like, you can project into your life whatever you want to project into it, and then take the steps to make that happen. So my big overarching goal for what would I like my life to look like in 5 years' time, I would like it to be happy. Which is not to say that I'm not happy right now. It is just to say that that's what I want it to look like in 5 years. So now I need to break it down, because I don't have a genie's lamp. It's been my birthday, so I don't have another cake wish until 2025. And so that means that I need to do some work in order to make this goal achievable. And, we all know, because we do it with our kids, we all know about SMART targets. But as I've talked about on the show before, when we've talked about target setting, I don't think SMART targets are enough. I really don't. I think it's too narrow. I think it's too small. I think we need to add steps to SMART targets, which does kind of defeat the purpose of SMART target setting. Because the point of narrowing it down to SMART, as M-A-R-T, is that there are 5 steps to it, which in theory makes it more accessible, makes it more digestible, makes it easier. But honestly, how many of our students, when we get them to set their half-termly targets and we get them to make it SMART and all of that stuff, how many of them do in fact achieve it? How many of us do in fact achieve our targets, achieve our goals, even when we make them SMART? So I think that we need to add a couple of extra things in to our SMART targets to make them more attainable. I do think they need to be specific, because I've tried. Over the past couple of weeks, now that I'm working predominantly from home, I've had to kind of get myself into this new routine of, knowing when my live lessons are, knowing when I'm going to do my marking, knowing when I'm going to respond to parent emails, all of that stuff that in school I would have had an allotted timetabled slot for. Now I've got to kind of do under my own steam. And I found for the first week after getting back from the US, I found that I was floundering a little bit, because I knew that I had all this stuff to do and I was doing it, but I never quite recognized that I was doing it because it was all a bit ad hoc. It was like, oh, I've got 5 minutes now, I'll reply to an email. Oh, I know that my next lesson is in half an hour, so I'll just do a little bit of reading before I go and teach. And everything became a little bit, I don't know, woolly, and I never felt like I was achieving anything. I never felt satisfied with what I was doing. I say never, as if it were for a long time. It was only a week. But I didn't feel like I was achieving anything. I didn't feel like I was getting anything done. So I started to then make myself daily to-do lists, which is working much better for me, because I have now got very specific things that I am doing each day, and I am ticking them off and I am getting them done. And sometimes I'm able to tick things off from the next day, because I blast through my to-do list and I am then able to work, more efficiently. And sometimes I don't, but I've got it written down that I still need to do it. So, specificity is really important. They should be written down. There is something about the act of writing that makes something more permanent, that makes it more important. There is that link between our brain and seeing it on paper that makes something exist. Now, I'm big into speaking. As an MFL teacher, speaking is my specialism. I am here on the radio speaking to you. You can't see any of my written notes for this show. So I do think that speaking is important, but there is something about the actual act of writing that makes something concrete, that makes something real. So write your goals down. Now, some people don't like to do that. Some people may be embarrassed by their goals, and so they don't want to write them down in a place that they can be seen, that they can be found. Maybe you're a parent, you've got teenage kids who like to snoop through your stuff, and you don't want them finding your list of goals. Write them down in Chinese. That might be a technique that only applies to me and a select few other MFL teachers in the country. But there are, you could come up with your own cipher if you wanted to make it a bit more fun. You could get yourself a lockable journal. You could get yourself a safe to keep your goals in. If you are wanting to really achieve your goals, to really work for this, and to really make your goals work for you, writing them down is the best way to do it. And if that means investing a little bit of money in something that is lockable, in a class so that you pick up a foreign language so that you can keep your goals in a foreign language, whatever it might be, then it is worth that investment. It is worth that investment because the idea of writing them down makes them real. Remember that you can password protect Word documents. You can password protect entire folders on your computer if you like to keep digital records, so you can write them down in there. Okay, it's just about making them real, making them concrete. They need to be measurable. You give yourself a time frame. And I suppose that's why we pick 5 years. 5 years is kind of arbitrary when we think about it. But it's far enough away so that progress can be made, but close enough that you kind of do have to start working on it. I think if we started having 10-year plans as our default, we probably wouldn't work on them as much or in as timely a manner as with the 5 years. They need to be action oriented. You need to actually do something, and you need to know what you're going to do. Okay, our goals don't magically fall into our laps. I am not magically going to have a happy life in 5 years. Okay, you actually have to do things to achieve them. And the best thing that you can do is, again, to write down what those steps are going to be. Create yourself a roadmap. Create yourself a timeline. They need to be realistic. I, realistically, am not going to change the education system as much as I might like to, because that involves going into politics that I have no interest in. You know, there's a lot of other nonsense around being the education secretary that I just don't want. It's outside of my skill set. I know what we need to do, but then I think all teachers know what needs to be done. That doesn't mean that we are all cut out for politics, but many of us are. And it's better, let's be honest, it's better for the country if I leave politics to the people who are cut out for it. So, you know, that's not a realistic goal for me. But I also don't want to make my goals too small. You know, I want to, one of the smaller goals that we're going to talk about in a minute is that I want to increase the size of my vanity shelf. So vanity shelf is, in case you don't know, it's the shelf in a writer's bookcase where they put the books that they have published. I currently have 10 on my vanity shelf. And I could say, as one of my short-term goals, in 5 years' time, I want that to be 12. And I can say that because I know that I've got at least 2 more books coming out this year. So that's something that is realistic because I already know it's going to happen. But it's also very small and requires no effort on my part because those books are pretty much done. So realism should not be an excuse for laziness, and it shouldn't be an excuse for keeping yourself in a box. So be realistic, but don't be too small with your goals. They should be time bound. So I could say that I want to add 2 books to my vanity shelf by January 2025. That's realistic in its time binding. But like I said just now about the difference between a 5-year span and a 10-year span, having a relatively close but not ridiculous time limit is going to encourage you to get it done. I'm speaking at the Teachers Talk Radio MFL conference in November. And I'm really excited for it. I know what I'm going to talk about. I've done all of the research already, but I've not yet started to put my presentation together because in my head I'm going, well, it's not until November. And if I put my presentation together now, I will have forgotten kind of what a lot of my slides mean, and so I'm going to leave it until a bit later. So because I have this kind of time, I've got this 2 months, I think it is, until the conference happens, I'm not working on it, despite the fact that I really should, because I want it to be good. I want to make sure that I'm doing my very best work. So again, that's about knowing yourself, knowing how much time you need in order to do something. And Hannah and the rest of Team MFL, just in case you're listening, I am working on it, I promise. Attainable goals need to anticipate obstacles, which is not the same as saying, oh, this is going to get in my way, so I'm not even going to bother. You need to know what the likely roadblocks are to achieving your goals so that you can find ways around them. Because it's much easier to avoid a roadblock that you've anticipated than to fight it when you come up against it. So think about what the issues are likely to be so that you can skirt around them. So then when you come up against unanticipated obstacles, you've got the headspace to be able to deal with them. Because there will be unanticipated obstacles. If we had done this show back in January, and we had looked at like New Year's resolutions, I would not have anticipated the fact that I would be in a completely different job come August. And yet I am, and I've managed to manage that, and I've managed to adapt my goals specifically because I was equipped for the smaller roadblocks that came up with my New Year's resolutions. And there needs to be incentives, because as much as people, especially in education, want to tell you that hard work is its own reward and we're doing it for the kids, sometimes you need that concert, like we were talking about at the beginning of the show. Sometimes you need that chocolate bar. Sometimes you need that curved monitor. I bought myself a curved monitor for my computer because I wanted one, and I told myself that when I hit a specific goal, I would get it. I set the money aside, I hit my goal, I bought the monitor. Because unless you are the most altruistic person in the world, you can't do everything for other people, and you can't do all of your goals just for the sake of accomplishing goals. There needs to be smaller incentives. There needs to be smaller victories that come along the way. And this is why we break our goals down. Because by breaking our goals down, we are able to incentivize ourselves much more appropriately. So we're now going to break our goals right down. We're going to come just to this term. So for the next, 16 weeks between now and the Christmas holidays, I want you to come up while we listen to the adverts. So, do make sure that you are paying attention to our adverts while you are doing this. But while the adverts are playing, I want you to come up with 4 or 5 short-term goals that you have just for this term. So essentially for the time between now and the end of 2024. So when we come together for our New Year's celebration in January 2025, what do you want to say you have achieved this term? And again, this is personal, this is for you, okay? So it can be professional, it can be about teaching, it can be about your job, or it could be personal. But just 4 or 5 things that you want to have achieved by the end of this year.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Okay, I'm going to use the future perfect tense when doing this. I want to have done something. And the reason I'm going to do that is because it psychologically, again, it puts the end point at the front of my mind. It really drives home the fact that even though it might seem like a long way off, December 31st, 2024 will come. And so, my deadline for these goals will be reached. So by the end of 2024, I want to have read 100 books. I am well behind on my reading goal for this year. I don't even think I've read 50 yet. So I am aware that gives me like 4 months in which to read about, I think, 52 books, something like that. But that's what I want to have achieved. I'm going to cheat with this one. I want to have delivered a good talk at the TTR MFL Teach Meet, and at the other the other two places that I am presenting over the next couple of months. So I want to have delivered high quality talks at those places, 3 of them. I want to have finished writing my A-level Latin course. And you can tell that I was listening to the adverts instead of thinking of these goals, because I am kind of coming up with them on the fly with you right now. But that's okay, because maybe the time that I gave you wasn't quite enough, and that's all right. Finish A-level course writing, and I want to have right, I know what I want to do. I want to have, starting next week, remembered to post guest cards for Saturday morning breakfast on my social media every week, because I always forget. So hopefully I'm not the only TTR show that you listen to, and you will notice that all of the other hosts tell you each week what the show is going to be about. They tweet out their little green cards that I do kind of occasionally, but not always. I forget. I do forget. I hold my hands up to that. And I think one of the reasons that I forget is because, as you will have noticed, I very rarely have guests. So it seems a bit strange to me to do a guest card. So I think what I'm going to do in my head is I'm going to change what it's called. Just for me mentally, I'm going to call it a topic card. And I'm going to make sure that for every show that I do between now and December, I am going to create and share a topic card. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I always feel really guilty that I don't, because I know that I should. I feel really bad that unless you've kind of listened to the previous show, you don't necessarily know what I'm going to talk about each week. Despite the fact that I do, I've got my shows planned until the middle of January. And it's just one of those things that each week I feel guilty about because I haven't done. And each week I tell myself, this week I'm going to. And then I just don't. So I'm going to make it one of my goals. Okay, weekly topic cards. So those are my 4. By the end of 2024, I'm going to have read 100 books. I'm going to have delivered 3 high-quality talks. I'm going to have finished writing my A-level Latin course. And I'm going to have posted topic cards for each show, each week that I do one. Okay, 4. They are specific goals. Apart from the high-quality talk, that one's a little bit woolly, because what does high quality mean? So that's just going to come down to my personal interpretation of high quality, and hopefully the people who listen will agree with me. They are measurable. I will know whether I've read 100 books because I track. I will know whether I've delivered a high quality talk because I will get feedback from people. I will know whether I have finished writing my A-level course because there will either be a course or there won't be. I will know whether I've posted topic cards every week because there will be a record on my Twitter. Are they realistic? Yes, I can create topic cards. I can finish writing a course. I can talk with the best of them. Getting caught up on my books might be a bit of a stretch, but it is realistic. I know that I can read 100 books in a year, and it's not like I'm trying to read 100 books in 4 months. So they are all realistic. They are smart according to our SMART targets, and they follow on from what I had wanted, all of those extras, the extras that I wanted to add to SMART. How do they help me to achieve my 5-year goal of having a happy life? Well, I like reading. I like reading very much. And so that just helps me to be happy. But also, reading helps me to be better at teaching. It improves my subject knowledge if I read books on language, if I read books on classical history. It helps me to improve my teaching if I read books on pedagogy, which I do for the show. It helps me to get better grades in my doctorate if I read books related to my thesis, related to my assignments. And all of that, being better, trying to be at the top of my game, helps me to lead my happy life. Delivering high quality talks gets me there because I do want my talks to be a big part of my career path going forward. I want to be a CPD provider. I want that to be one of the strands of this new thing that I'm building for myself. And kind of doing the talks that I do helps me to get there. I want classics to be as accessible to people, particularly people like me who come from, down to earth, normal working class families. And finishing my A-level course for my online school will help that to be achievable. And writing my topic cards will make me feel less guilty every week. So it will take away that nagging feeling that I have at the back of my head, which will make me happier. So all of that feeds into my 5 years. Okay. And that's kind of the point of these short and long-term goals. It's kind of like a triangle. We have triangles a lot, don't we, in these theories? The hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is always a triangle. The nutritional pyramid is a pyramid, which is a 3D triangle. So I kind of see it as a triangle, as a pyramid. You've got your short-term goals, which should be a few months or a term, I think is good for those of us in teaching. Long enough to actually get some traction, long enough for us to actually achieve something, but not too long that we can put it off. Then we have got our long-term goals. What do we want? What would we like our lives to look like in 5 years' time? And then in the middle there, we need to have some medium-range goals. What do we want our lives to look like in 1 or 2 years? What do we want these short-term goals to lead up to? Because again, it would be very easy to come up with a big list of short-term goals that don't actually mean anything, that don't lead to anything, except to whatever incentive you are giving yourself. So, I'm going to buy myself a bar of chocolate every Friday, and if I have done the dusting every single morning before work, I will eat that bar of chocolate. Great. That's a short-term goal. I'm going to do the dusting every morning before I leave for work. There is an incentive. If I do that, I am going to eat my bar of chocolate. But how does that actually improve your life? Unless you live in an incredibly dusty house. So you shouldn't set yourselves goals just for the reward, which is what I said before about not setting something that is too easy. I don't want to just add 2 books to my vanity shelf because I know that those are coming out. I don't need to work for that. So think about how your goals are actually going to get you to that 5-year place. And everything should build on top of what has come before. It's a pyramid. It's a pyramid. Okay, the next thing is to break down our termly goals, our short-term goals, into actual actionable steps. Because, like I said, November is in this term. I'm talking now about a 3-term year rather than a 6-term year, although how you interpret term will be up to you. So I'm thinking, like I said, between now and December. November, when I am doing the MFL talk, is in that time. But like I said, I have not yet started to actually physically put the presentation together. I just know what I'm going to talk about. I've just done my research for it. So, a term can still be quite a long time, and it can still encourage you to procrastinate. It can still encourage you to put things off. So we're going to apply the TNT principle to blow up our procrastination. And in this case, TNT stands for today, not tomorrow. So these now are our daily and weekly habits that will help you to reach your short-term goal, that will then help you to reach your long-term goal. Okay, so it's all about breaking these things down into manageable chunks, just like we do for our children, just like we do in our lessons. Okay, we don't want that cognitive overload, being overwhelmed by our goals. So, what can we do daily, weekly, that will help us to achieve those termly goals? So we're now just thinking between now and December. What can we do every day or every week to help us get there? Okay. So again, I'm going to give you 90 seconds if you are joining in, if you are kind of doing this along with me, to have a think about what you are going to do daily, weekly, to achieve those goals that you came up with just now, just for this term. What changes are you going to make? Okay, so for me, I am going to read at least one chapter per day of a book. And that's going to help me with my read 100 books goal and my delivering high quality talks goal. Because by reading a chapter of a book per day, sometimes that will be fiction, sometimes that will be non-fiction, and it will be about the topics of my talks. And so, I can kind of combine, kill two birds with one stone, as the idiom goes, and save myself some time, save myself some headspace that way. Is reading one chapter per day necessarily going to get me my 50 whatever books it is that I need? No. But that's why I've hedged it with that at least. Because I might really get into the book and blaze through it. I did this last Sunday. I sat down to read one chapter last Sunday, and I ended up reading the entire book. And I was, very grateful that I had the time in which to do that, but I did. Okay, so at least one chapter per day. I'm going to write one unit of my A-level course each week. I did the maths very, very quickly, and that means that I should be able to finish that then by January. And I'm going to produce one topic card for my show each week. And I'm going to make sure it's posted ahead of the show itself. Now, with that one, I think I could be a little bit more specific. I could say I'm actually going to make my topic card on a Saturday. So maybe as soon as I finish the show, I make my topic card for my next show, and I could schedule the post then for a Wednesday. So with that one, Because that one has a very short-term time limit on it, because I've got this weekly turnaround for the shows, I could be even more specific if I wanted to. And I think with that one, maybe I need to, because the whole point of producing the topic cards is to attract people to the show, to make sure that people know what they're going to listen to make sure that that people come along and do tune in. So with some goals, you can be a bit vaguer, even when you start making your action plan, even when you start applying your today, not tomorrow principle. You can be a bit more woolly, but others will need you to be very specific. And that's going to depend, again, on the type of person that you are and the type of goals that you are trying to come up with. But that's my action plan, okay, in order to achieve those goals. When you meet your short-term goals, of course, your mid-range goals, which we haven't really talked about today, but that's going to be the midpoint. What would I like my life to look like in 2 years that is going to make my lead a happy life in 5 years much more accessible? Your short-term goals are going to make your mid-term goals flow more easily. So let's say that in 2 years, I would like to have reduced the amount of things that cause me stress by 50%. I know that one of the things that causes me stress is not having my topic cards every week. And that's completely on me. That's not stress coming from TTR at all. That's just how my brain works. And so I know that producing topic cards is going to reduce that. And so it's going to help me to hit my goal of leading a more stress-free life. But it's that 5-year goal that is the important one, because it's that 5-year goal that we are ultimately working towards. And I think sometimes we can forget that. I think sometimes it's really easy to get bogged down in the minutiae of the day-to-day and the minutiae of your short-term goals and forget what your goals are actually leading to. And if your goals don't lead to anything, if you don't have that overarching 5-year goal, then they're not goals anymore, and it's a to-do list. And I think it's important to keep that separation, because again, you could put polish every day, dust every day on your list of goals, but is it actually a goal? If your house is disgusting, then yes. If your house is not disgusting, if you are very house proud, but polishing is the one thing that you just don't do, then yes. But if it's just something that you think you ought to do a little bit more often, then it's not a goal. It's a to-do. And sometimes, and we will have all noticed this with our pupils, with our tutor groups, sometimes they put to-dos instead of goals because they are easily achievable. And we need that validation. We do need those rewards. It's why we plan them into our goal setting. But if every goal is a to-do, if every goal is just something that you have to do anyway, that you were going to do anyway, then it's not actually going to make your life better, which is the point of goals. It is the point of goal setting, is to make sure that you can lead the happiest, most productive life that you can. So always keep that 5-year goal in mind, and the goals that you set yourself for your medium and short-term ranges should feed into that. I don't think that everything that you do should feed into your 5-year goal. Some people advocate that. I think that's a bit too narrow. And in some cases, I think that could be a bit hedonistic. If my 5-year goal is to lead a happy life, then I could say, oh no, I'm not doing anything that does not make me happy, which is just not realistic. But your goal setting should be something that helps you to reach that 5 years. And every goal you reach should help you to build towards the next. I was thinking about this, particularly yesterday. I was prompted by a YouTuber who was on a weight loss journey. She wanted to lose whatever it was so that she could get into a specific dress for a wedding. And she said, she was very honest in her video yesterday. She said that she went to this wedding, she fit in the dress, she went to the wedding. Then the day after the wedding, she had this massive splurge on all the food that she had deprived herself of while she was losing the weight because she had achieved that goal. And she kind of hadn't set herself a stretch goal. She hadn't put anything in place to make sure that the weight that she had wanted to lose didn't go back on. And I think the problem that she had was that she had misrepresented her goal, because she had set herself getting into this dress to go to a wedding as a target, but her goal was to lose the weight and to get rid of that weight. And so then when she put it back on, because she hadn't set herself a stretch goal, she felt like she had failed. And so I think it is really important to make sure that you know what your stretch goals are. I've achieved this, and so next I'm going to do this. I've posted my topic cards every week from September through to December. And hopefully I'm not going to stop doing that, because otherwise that would have defeated the point of starting the goal in the first place, which was to reduce the stress that I feel by not posting them. So keep in mind why you are doing your goals. Keep in mind what you are looking to achieve, and think about whether your goal actually does end, or whether this is something that does need to become a lifestyle change, a working habits change, and it might be on your goals list forever. Or, as I hope will be the case with my topic cards, it might become a to-do. So it's going to be a goal from now until December, but hopefully by that point it will become a habit, so then it just becomes a to-do, and it can make that shift. But always have your next goals ready, always have your stretch targets ready, always know what you want to do once you've achieved your goal. Does that goal disappear, or does something else need to happen with it so that you can continue to be happy?
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
And finally, obstacles and roadblocks. What is going to get in the way? And I'm just going to be very honest and say right now, time does not count. Because that's too vague. That's too broad. I don't have time isn't specific enough. Because the whole point of identifying obstacles and roadblocks is being able to come up with solutions. come up with ways to eliminate or avoid them. And I don't have time is a bit too woolly. So if that was your instinct, like it was mine, and this is why I'm saying this, because it was my first thought, you need to think about what it is about your time that gets in the way. So is it that in your head, you've got this idea that I want to read a chapter a day, like I do. In your head, you're thinking, I can only do that at bedtime. But you know that by the time you've put the kids to bed and you've loaded the dishwasher and you have collapsed in front of the TV for an hour, you just want to go to bed and fall straight asleep. Or you go to bed and you scroll, and you're not going to replace your scrolling with reading. If that's the case, then you have to say, right, okay, I'm going to get rid of this idea that I'm going to read before bed, and I'm going to read first thing in the morning. I'm going to take my book to work and I'm going to read at lunchtime. I'm going to read during my PPA. Think about exactly what it is about your time, or, any other vague general obstacle that you might have come up with. Think about specifically what the issue is, and then you come up with your way to avoid it. Because purely identifying a problem isn't helpful. Knowing that there is a problem on alone is not helpful. Okay, you need to come up with the solutions as well. So last time that I will play this piece of music, about 90 seconds, come up with 3 obstacles. So that's not even 1 per goal, but just generally 3 obstacles that might crop up this term that might stand in the way of you achieving your goals. Okay, so for me, again, I think I've got this vague notion of time stands in my way. There's a lot to do, and it's then hard to make sure that I fit in a chapter of reading per day, writing my unit per week, all of that sort of thing. But that's an excuse because I have control over my time. I have more control over my time than many other teachers do, because of the way that my new school works. So that's not a reason. My big issue, my big roadblock is my procrastination. My big roadblock is the fact that I will put things off. I don't like to put things off because when I procrastinate, I actually don't really put them off. I still spend all the time thinking about them. I just don't do them. So I know that. I've identified that. That's something that I can work around. And that's something that I can work around right now because we have come to the end of the show. I know exactly what my show is for next week. Well, I say that. I've got written down in my TTI planner what the show for next week is going to be, so I can go and look it up, and I can make my topic card for next week straight away. I can do that. That then is my procrastination done. I could, in fact, have I got time today? I've got time today. I could sit and make all of my topic cards today. I could then schedule those posts. So I know that my big issue is procrastination, and the way that I get around that is just by not procrastinating. I can't give myself the leeway to put it off. So you know what my goals are for this term. I'm going to read 100 books. I'm going to give 3 high-quality talks. High quality will be my own definition. I'm going to finish up writing my A-level Latin course, and I'm going to create and post my weekly topic cards. Those are my 4 goals. We're going to revisit my goals in January and see whether I've achieved them. And if you have set goals along with me this morning, we will revisit yours too. Thank you ever so much for tuning in today. I do hope you found that useful. Even if you didn't goal plan along with me, I hope that you enjoyed hearing my process. And it's got you thinking about your own goals for the year. As I said, if you want to share your goals with me over the next few weeks, then please do. If you want to share your progress with us, then please do. But I understand if you don't, because like I said, sometimes that endorphin rush is the same. And so sharing your goals can defeat the purpose. Do stay tuned to Teachers Talk Radio. We've got some amazing stuff coming up, as always, over the week. I hope that I will see you around in the comments, in the chat of some of the other shows. But if I don't, then I will see you next Saturday for our next Saturday morning breakfast. And there will have been a title card to go along with it. Thank you very much. Have yourselves a great weekend, whatever you are doing. Celebrate the end of the summer. I will see you next Saturday. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.